Okay, hello, Maestro Kevin Bowyer. I'm very happy that you can be here today. I don't even know how do you pronounce your name, Maestro?
As you said, it is Kevin Bowyer.
Bowyer.
Yeah,
Very good. Okay, I'm glad I got that right.
yeah.
And you were stuck in the train station. Did you go for some croissants or?
No. I needed to organise travel for Friday, but
Ah,
it was too far. I
uh-huh.
missed the amount of time I needed.
Yes, if you are okay with this, I would like to start this interview.
Okay. Well, my name is Kevin Bowyer. I am 62. I was born on the 9th of January 1961, and I live in Muirkirk in Scotland.
So is this kind of far off from the renowned organs, or do you get a chance to play there? Is there a church nearby?
Not really. I'm organist at the university in Glasgow, which
Uh-huh.
is nearly 40 miles north of where I live.
Yes, you have studied at the Royal Academy of Music and have performed as a renowned organist around the world. In a nutshell, could we have your most significant milestones, and could you tell us how you started to play the organ?
Yeah, sure. Well, I started to play the organ because I sang in a church choir. My grandfather bought me a series of piano accordion lessons from the age of 14, I think, maybe 13. But when I joined the choir, I quickly became interested in the organ. So that's where it started. It was a very small organ, only 8 stops. And I learned a lot of music in a very short space of time. I went to the Royal Academy of Music, as you mentioned, from 1979 to 1982, and I won the St. Albans International Organ Competition in 1983. Then in 1990, there were 4 more international organ first prizes in Calgary in Canada, Paisley in Scotland, Odense in Denmark, and Dublin in Ireland. But before then, I'd become interested in the organ works of Sorabji, who wrote 3 very large organ symphonies extending to 8 hours in the longest instance. And my most significant playing achievements have been with those pieces, at least the first 2 of those symphonies. I haven't done number 3 yet, but there may be a possibility to do that at a later stage. I got involved in recordings very early in my career, largely because of my interest in unusual music. And I made a very extensive discography over 30, 40 years, particularly with Nimbus Records, with whom I had a very big contract. I recorded all the organ works of Bach, of Brahms, of Alain, and many other composers. I lost count of the number of CDs I've made. It's over 100.
And you're renowned to be able to play pieces that other people can't play. Is that why you got so famous in recordings?
Well, yes, I suppose so. It was a series of stepping stones originally, because in 1987, I gave the first performance of Kaikosru Sorabji's Symphony No. 1, which had been written in 1924, published in 25, and no one had ever played it.
Wow.
It was considered unplayable. It's not actually unplayable, it's just very hard. And I have a very obstinate, determined nature. So I was silly enough to carry it through, and subsequently play Symphony No. 2 as well, which is 4 times as long and much harder. It's not because other people can't play them. I think it's because I'm probably one of the few people just determined enough and single-minded enough to carry it through. I can never let anything go until it's done. That's why.
Persistence.
Persistence in a nutshell, yes.
And you will be performing on the 10th of September at our cathedral in St. Gallen. Have you been here before? Have you been in this town before?
No, I haven't. I've never been there before. I'm looking forward to it.
And what's your connection? Do you have any connection to St. Gallen?
No. I received the invitation to play about 18 months ago. I have no connection really, so it'll be very interesting to visit.
So you travel around a lot, certainly, and What is it like for a professional organist to play an organ that you don't know well or are not familiar with? It must be a
Yeah,
completely new experience. It must be challenging.
it is. Every organ is a challenge. They all sound different. They all feel different. The stops combine in different ways. It is in each instance like getting to know a new person in each case. It's not like playing the piano where you go around. I mean, pianos are different from each other, of course, but they're not so different as organs
Mhm.
are different.
Mhm.
It is a challenge. Everything feels different. Even a piece that one knows very well
Mhm.
can feel quite alien on a new instrument. So it takes time to assimilate each new organ.
And how long does it take you to get accustomed to a new instrument when you travel and when you play at different concerts?
Yeah, 10 hours is
Mhm.
a good estimate, roughly. It depends on the repertoire too.
Mhm.
Sometimes certain programs take longer to prepare on new instruments, and sometimes there are instances where things feel very natural and very comfortable. And it depends on the repertoire, how many stop changes there are, how much registration there is to do, how many colors one has to go through, how many combinations one has to prepare. It
Mhm.
varies, but 10 hours is about average.
Wow. Yeah, and we're of course very excited that you come to visit, and you will also be honored with an award here, the
That's right.
honorary prize of the German record critics.
Yeah.
Why are you receiving this award in St. Gallen instead of Germany?
Well, I think it's convenience for the awarding body. They asked me for a series of concerts from which they could choose to present the award, and they chose St. Gallen. I'm playing two concerts in Germany. I'm in Magdeburg now,
Mhm.
playing a concert on the 24th of August, and also another in Arnstadt on the 29th. So I offered those two dates.
Why? What is the reason actually that you received this renowned prize?
I think ultimately it's because of my work with Sorabji, particularly Sorabji, but other repertoire that people rarely play, such as Charles Alcan, for example, the 19th century reclusive French composer, and Brian Ferneyhough, Xenakis, Castiglione, modern composers that one rarely hears, but particularly Sorabji, because in Sorabji's case, with very few exceptions, there are no other players
Mhm, mhm.
for this, and it's very long, and it's huge. It's like climbing a mountain and coming down the other side where no one's been before.
Do you think Sarachi played his works himself, or you think
No,
he just he didn't play? That's a nice
well,
anecdote. Can you tell
yeah,
us a little bit more about this?
yes. Well, he played his own piano music. He lived to the age of 96, and he wrote these three organ symphonies. Most of his output is for solo piano, although there are many piano concerti, all early pieces. Nine, in fact, I think there are. There are two symphonies for for orchestra, piano, and organ. One of them has a choir as well as a
Mhm.
symphonic mass. So there's a variety of styles of pieces. But most of his output is for piano. 80% of it or so is for solo piano. But there are these three very large organ symphonies. The first written in the 1920s, the second written between 1929 and 32, and the last one from 1949 to 53, which is not played as yet.
Could one say, you've already mentioned it now, but could one say that this composer composed a piece of music that had never been played in his lifetime and has never been played until you came and you worked yourself into it and you took up the effort and you made it possible?
Yeah, that's more or less true. The first symphony was published in 1925. In 1928, there were two performances, truncated performances, of the middle movement by an English organist in London, Edward Emlyn Davis. But it was only the middle movement, and the second half of the second fugue was omitted in both cases. Apart from that, those two isolated performances in 1928, the next performance was in 1987, and that was I played the first and the last movements, and Thomas Trotter played the middle. And subsequently, I recorded the whole thing and played it a number of times around Europe, 8 or 9 times, I think. But there are these 2 other symphonies as well. Symphony number 2 I played in 2009, 2010, and several times since, the last time in 2019. Sorabji died in 1988, and that was the year that I was playing the Symphony number 1. So he did hear a recording of me playing that.
That's nice to hear. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this honorary prize, what does it mean to you? Is it kind of also a life achievement award for you? Is that the way you see it? Or can you tell us a little bit more about this?
Well, I suppose it is, really. It's nice to be acknowledged. It's reassuring that people listen too, because sometimes one plays these huge pieces and you don't know whether people are listening or not. You don't know how many people listen to the CDs or the concerts. The concerts, particularly of the Second Symphony, are marathons for the audience as well as the organist. I think when I played in the Elbphilharmonie, we started with 1,000 people, but by the end there were only 120 or so survivors. It's an effort to listen to. The music is very, very complex, unrelentingly dense. It's difficult to register. The colors change all the time. He uses the organ like a piano, so it's not, the music is not organized in block registration where you have a sound that goes on for a long time. It's like playing the piano, where you may start very quietly and then suddenly you're playing something very loud and then down again to very quiet. So to achieve that on the organ, one has to prepare each change of sound incrementally. So to get a crescendo from pianissimo to fortissimo, the organ has to go through maybe 15 or 20 changes of registration to achieve that, and each of those needs to be organized in advance. If there's a computer, the changes need to go into the computer. If it's hand registration, then need to be prepared to practice such complex registration changes
for 10 hours. Yeah. And if you say the music is unrelentingly complex, would you say from an unknown person that's not familiar with music, it's not pleasing to the ear then? Or could one say that? Or
yeah, well, I suppose so in a way, although it does sound like music, so you can appreciate it as music. I think that the chief problem with it is that it goes on for so long. In the case of Symphony number 2, for example, the first movement lasts for only just over an hour, but the second movement plays for 4 hours without a break. So it's continuous listening for 4 hours. And although the music itself is not necessarily wearing to listen to, it's just very, very long. And to hold one's concentration for such a long period of time, it requires an effort.
I was just going to mention that if you play for 4 hours straight, what challenges does this pose to the body, to your mind, to your fingers? I mean, do you have some isotonic drink next to you, or how do you manage that?
Yeah, I don't do that, but I have found that there is a point at which the concentration begins to fold up, and you have to practice breaking through that point, and that point can last for an hour or so in performance. And if you're very tired, the fingers want to stop playing as well. They want to stop working, and it's difficult to play the right notes then. So I think in each of the performances of the Second Symphony that I've given, I've had to tunnel through extensive period in the second movement where in which I really wanted to stop, but you can't stop. You have to go on. And I found that if you just keep going, after 40, 50 minutes, an hour or so, you come out of it at the end and you find that the concentration's returned. I don't quite know physiologically how that works, but it's because I've gone through it and I know roughly at what period it's going to be. Yeah, it's around the 3 hour mark, the 2.5 hour mark. That's where it starts to get difficult. But you just have to keep going.
So it's also a mastery of the mind, kind of the mind and the body, and you would even be a great motivational teacher, psychological coach, if you say so. So what makes you, can you go into a bit much further detail? What makes you break through this barrier when the concentration wears off? How is
Yeah,
this? What plays
yeah.
in your mind then? What happens?
Well, it's easy to start to get depressed when you realize that you're not playing those passages as well as you could. But it's a mechanical thing. You need to claw one note after the next and just keep going, keep driving on through. I mean, I suppose perhaps this isn't a very good analogy, but it's like going on a very long journey in a car and you have to get to a place and you know that you can't stop. I know it sounds like a day to do, but perhaps it's equally, an unwise thing to do in music. But there's this 4-hour piece to perform and you either give up or you go on to the end. And if you go on to the end, the rewards for the last 3/4 of an hour or so are worth having. He saves the most complicated music to the end. So unless you can get there with some of what your emotional strength and your concentration intact, it's impossible to play those last moments anyway. So it's just a question of hanging on to the determination and focusing on the point at the end, knowing you're going to get there. Whatever happens, you're going to claw through to the end. My back gets very tired as well. I get very tired. I sit at the organ and sometimes as I play, I do this with the shoulders, try the physique as I'm playing. It may look funny to the audience, but it does freshen me. Time maybe I get to variation 33. There are 49 variations in this movement. I get to variation 33 and I feel very tense and tight and I loosen up a little bit. And although I don't recover entirely, it loosens me up enough to get to variation 34, and that's 1 or down, and 35 is the next one, obviously. And I try to do this and just keep myself physically intact to get back to that.
I suppose it's a lot of discipline also, right? Then it's just going on, taking one step further, and then you come to the next and you count it down, and then you see the end, and then you're very happy that you've achieved it. But you get a chance to get a sip of water or a bite, grab a sandwich in between. You don't have that time.
No.
But you do not work. You do not work with a mental coach or something? Do you take the services of a mental coach?
No, I've never done that. I've never done. Sounds like a good idea. And when I played parts of the Second Symphony in Iowa in 2017, there was a press conference, and the first question at the press conference was from a guy who said, "So how do you prepare for this then? Is it like an athlete where you practice very hard one day and then you take the next day off?" And I thought to myself, should have done that. That's a good idea. But it had never occurred to me. I'm sure there are many better ways of coping with this than I've developed myself. And some of them may be obvious, but they've passed me by.
Certainly very interesting for me as a, I don't know, the word doesn't come to me. I'll just look this up for a second. Okay, of course. Certainly very interesting for me as a layman to listen to your explanations. And I've read a little bit about you also on Wikipedia, and there it says you once weren't allowed to play in the church. Or is this an urban myth and you snuck in anyway? Can you tell us a little bit about this anecdote?
Yeah, that's true, I'm afraid. Yes, I was very young. I started to play the organ when I was 15. So this must have been when I was 15 or so. And I was, this is in the church where I was a choir boy. There was a man who didn't like the fact that I was using the church's electricity. He didn't like the fact that I was going along, playing the organ, and the church was paying the bill. I'm sure the bill wasn't very big. Electricity wasn't expensive in those days as it is today. But he didn't like this. And I think he had a sort of mean streak as well. So he forbade me to play and locked the church. Well, one day when I was at a wedding, I had to get into the church. So I borrowed the key and I took it off to a local shop and had it copied. And they didn't stop me after that. I don't think they ever, well, I don't know for sure whether they ever discovered that, but I continued to practice. In any case, the next year I was appointed organist of the church. So if they they prevented me from playing, they wouldn't have had an organist the next year. But
so
it's true.
luckily for us, you weren't found out.
Yeah, yeah.
And the church doors will be wide open for you when you come visit St. Gallen. I'm sure you will like the cathedral. It's really a magical place. And thank you very much.
My pleasure.
For this interview.
Okay, my pleasure. Thank you.